Tonight's first speaker will be Dan Fox. Dan is a member of the City of Calgary's climate program. Currently, Dan is leading development and implementation of the electric vehicle strategy for Calgary, including collaboration with regional partners across southern Alberta to develop a fast charging network. Dan has led multiple environmental initiatives and has worked at the City of Calgary with the Alberta government, Griffith City Council in Australia, and the City of Edmonton. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Dan Fox.
Hi, my name is Dan Fox, and I'm with the City of Calgary's climate program. I'm pleased to be here tonight to speak about some of the EV work that we're looking to do here in the next few years. So, dive right in. A little overview of the presentation, talk about why electric vehicles, a little conversation about energy efficiency and emissions, and then a little bit on some of the future actions that we hope to undertake over the next 4 years. I'm sure you guys have seen a lot of information about the rise of the electric vehicles. This is information from Bloomberg that came out in 2016. So they said by 2040, approximately 35% of new vehicles will be electric vehicles. 6 months later, they came out and revised it, said 47%. And 6 months after that, they came back at 54. And I'm sure if you looked online, you could probably see that that number is higher. But what the key thing that has remained fairly consistent across a lot of the analysis out there is that there's going to be a break-even point at around 2022 where EVs will be priced the same as internal combustion engines. So that was a real driver for us to prepare so the City of Calgary can, allow the uptake of this technology. Here's a fairly old little graph that we put together of all the different electric vehicles that are starting to be introduced. This is completely out of date. I know last week there was 8 different Hyundai models that they announced that will be coming over from China, and also another series from Honda. And it seems like every week the manufacturers are announcing some of their EV plans going forward. As a climate change person, I guess I would pretty much have to talk about energy efficiency and emissions. So one of the reasons why we're looking to do this is there has been a lot of conversations about given the current makeup of electricity in this province, is an electric vehicle actually reducing emissions? So this is some information from the US EPA. As you can see, the red highlighted part there, that 16 to 30% of energy used in the conventional gasoline engine is only used for motion. 68 to 72% of that energy is actually lost in various other parts, but mostly thermal energy that is lost. Looking at electric vehicles, it's 72 to 82%. Now, this alone looks like the main reason why the current makeup shows that an electric vehicle using today's power makeup will actually reduce the overall GHG impact of the electric platform. So this is some analysis that we did for our climate resilience plan that was recently approved at Council in June. And the main point that we're trying to make here is, well, a larger overview. So right now, transportation emissions account for about 36% of all of Calgary's emissions. And the red line that you see here is the baseline going out to 2050. And it is the only sector, looking at buildings, looking at waste, looking at everything else, that is slated to actually rise to 2050. Now, for our analysis, we did 2 trend lines. One looking at a 50% uptake, and that's your blue line, and one is 100%, and the GM stands for goods movement. So we've also looked at other more efficient alternative fuels in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. And then you see the target line being the green line. The one thing that I probably should have started this off with. The red line includes every single action that the City of Calgary is currently undertaking to reduce emissions associated with transit, cycling, walking, and we pretty much see this as the largest opportunity to reduce greenhouse gas emissions associated with the transportation sector, and one of the largest reduction potentials of any action that the city can do to meet its 2050 objectives. Another thing of note that we didn't do for this analysis, there's still some gap that we see between the purple and the blue lines. We expect as renewables come on board that we should be able to close that gap to meet that target if everything plays out the way that we expect. So the proposed EV strategies and actions, I'm not going to speak too much about this, but the main things that we're trying to achieve through this work is to reduce and enable, reduce barriers and enable people to put in EV charging infrastructure. For example, how to properly communicate with utilities as people pull permits to put in EV charging stations. Those type of things are the things that we're hoping to streamline and improve, and also look at different charging requirements associated with the new construction and also multifamily and workplace environments. So that's one of the projects that we're looking to start in the near term here. But yeah, other things that we're looking to do is a fair bit of outreach and education, speaking about the potentials of this technology, trying to alleviate some of the concerns that we've heard about, range anxiety and other concerns that people have. And lastly, we're also looking at some of the commercial fleets, specifically within the goods movement piece. There is some debate about what is the alternative fuel of choice. Natural gas and hydrogen seems to have a role in this environment, but we are seeing that electric vehicles are starting to come into play, and all of this is going to be somewhat interesting to see how it plays out with autonomous vehicles entering that market as well. So one last note, exciting project. It's called the Prairies to Peaks Southern Alberta EV Charging Network. We recently obtained some money from the FCM and also a collection of, here, I have the full list here, of different regional partners in the south. So there's the City of Calgary, there's Medicine Hat, there's Lethbridge, there's Southgrow, and the Southern Alberta Regional Initiative and Medicine Hat College, who have all teamed up in order to put in this fast charge network. And our aim is to electrify Highway 3, Highway 2 South, and Highway 1. So people will be able to connect into the networks into BC along Highway 1, Highway 3, and a future network that is supposedly being planned in Montana. Now, we are currently at the stage of the RFP recently closed, and we are doing some evaluations on potential proponents. So please stay tuned, and hopefully this will be well under its way this time next year. So with that being said, I look forward to our panel discussion and questions from the audience. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jim Stile. Jim is passionate and enthusiastic about electric vehicles. He owns his own business importing electric vehicles from the United States. And he is also, I'm going to say, a grandmaster, an expert, a magician at retrofitting classic cars with electric vehicle components and turning them into something that is both beautiful and classic and also futuristic and modern. So, excellent person to speak to us tonight about electric vehicles in tandem with their use for solar panels. He is an electrical engineer. He has 3 other degrees besides it, and he has spent over 10 years traveling the world teaching high school physics and chemistry. Ladies and gentlemen, Jim Stile.
Myths about electric cars, misconceptions and common questions, limitations, some of my own stories about EV ownership, and I'm sure there'll be lots of more questions about that, and possibly, if I get to it, the future of electric cars. So who in the audience owns an electric car? That was one of the 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. And dare I ask how many people would like to own an electric car? Yeah. Okay, good. All right. So myths. Get myself organized here. Left hand. I don't think that's going to work. All right. So here's a little graph that I came up with. You got on the bottom axis how disruptive a particular technology is. Can you read that? Disruptiveness, yeah. And on the top there, what people actually know about what they want. And electric cars are quite a disruptive technology, and so typically education is really important because most people know so little about electric cars that they are scared to get one, even though they're okay. They're not that scary. As a matter of fact, they're really simple. Myths. All right, so these myths are starting to fade away. But one of the myths but here's some examples. This one here, I don't know if you have run into this myth or not. It might not be real. And then a lot of people jokingly talk to me about how long my extension cord is on my electric car. But this is a real myth, or at least a real concern. And I actually spent quite a bit of time making sure, especially in Alberta, that this is actually a myth. And it definitely is. But a lot of people may not know, may not be willing to believe that, or I think it's still out there is what I'm getting at. This came in my inbox just August 19th, 2018, I guess it was. This was from Forbes magazine, and in there it says that electric vehicles definitely reduce emissions by more than gas vehicles. And if you are worried about coal-fired power plants, then you can always subscribe to NMAX or whatever for green power, right? Or you get your own solar. So the future's looking pretty good. Let's see, is there any more myths? Oh yeah, there's another myth about that. And that does happen, but it happens a lot with cars with gas tanks in it as well. And typically in an electric car, the fire starts really slowly, and you'll have time to get out of there. And I think a lot of it is based on fear or a misunderstanding about sodium, or lithium, sorry, it's lithium. Lithium is a very flammable metal, but in electric car batteries, it's not in its metallic form, so it will never burn like that. The fire from an electric car is caused by the heat when a battery will short itself out. And then they will heat each other and heat each other and heat each other, and they will eventually all catch fire. But a lot of people that I speak to think that electric power batteries are very, very dangerous, and actually that I'd rather crash an electric car than a gas car. Okay, now this one's, I don't know, it's not really that relevant, but a surprising number of very smart people have said to me, you know, if you just took that electric car and then put a generator on the wheels, then you could just drive it forever. Which, oops, is this theory right here. That you have a motor, and the motor turns a generator. Can you see my little thing moving on the screen there? And then the generator in turn powers the motor, which in turn turns the generator. And in theory, that would work if the motor was 100% efficient and the generator was 100% efficient. And so there's a lot of people who talk to me about things like that, where you have... I did not make that graphic. But I didn't even draw that face in there, although you can see it looks... Somebody got after this picture. It looks like my Land Rover, though, actually. So other than myths, there are a lot of misconceptions about electric cars, and one of the ones that I think is somewhat real is that the batteries in an electric car are have quite an environmental cost, so to speak. Like obviously getting all that stuff out of the ground, lithium is hard to mine and then purify, and the batteries can be recycled, but even more so than being recycled, they can be reused. And so we now are looking at Nissan, for example, that takes the used batteries out of the Nissan Leaf, which up until Tesla released the Model 3, was the most highest sales electric car in the world or something like that. Anyway, the Nissan Leaf is a really popular car, and Nissan is really progressive. And so they're taking the batteries out of Leafs when they're below 70% or something like that, and then they're repurposing them. And that thing up on the right there is a Powerwall. That's a recycled or repurposed Tesla battery. And you can use that with your solar so that your solar panels produce power during the day. They put the power into your Powerwall, and then at night you can charge your EV from the Powerwall, because you're not getting much power out of your solar panels at night. So that's it's still a concern, and I think battery technology will bring us a long ways towards having less of a concern about the environmental impact of the batteries. But at the very least, there's a lot of effort being gone into just reusing them. They don't just get thrown out. Range. Okay, what was I going to say about range? Let's have a look at the picture. I can't remember. This is just a few hours ago I did this. Okay, here we go. So for most people, an electric car that you buy now will have enough range to serve what is commonly said as 95% of your driving needs. I've been driving an electric car now for, I don't know, a year and a half or something like that. And I just charge it at home every night. I get up in the morning and it's full, and I've never had to charge anywhere else other than just charge at home at night. So they really do suit most of your needs. And then I have a truck that I take on fishing trips and highway long trips or something like that. So it's a commuter car, unless you buy a Tesla. Or some of the newer ones are getting up there, right? You can get a Bolt, or actually half of the EVs in the world are not all electric, but hybrids, right? Probably a lot of you guys in this room that have an electric car have a hybrid. If you only have one vehicle, probably it's likely to be a hybrid. So there's that. That's sort of a misconception, right? EVs aren't practical. Well, you can buy a brand new one that's pretty darn good, or you can save a little money and buy a used one, and all the ones that are around that you can buy will still give you enough range to get you through the day quite easily. We'll talk about winter driving in a little while. Okay, what am I on to next year? Okay, charging. Kai is going to be talking about chargers a little bit later on. So, we've got to go back. Okay. And do they go fast or slow? Well, driving an EV is like driving a souped-up golf cart. They really are really fun to drive. I call it point-and-shoot driving. And I'm going to say it's safer to drive an EV because you can merge into traffic so much more easily. It's just much more enjoyable driving experience. And I think Tesla has really gone a long ways to dispelling the myth that EVs don't go fast. But a lot of people are really surprised when they hop in an electric car with me and it goes fast. Like I did in the parking lot with that guy earlier. Did you guys see that? I did that. Maintenance. This is just a lot of people also wonder, well, what's it like to maintain an electric car? Like, that's a kind of a weird thing. And really, an electric car motor only has one moving part, and so requires almost no maintenance. As a matter of fact, oops, I don't need that one. That one there. There's two of those on the end of the motor shaft, and those have to be replaced every 300,000 kilometers, or maybe it's miles, I can't remember. And that's it. That's the only maintenance on an electric motor. There's no alternator, there's no starter, there's no coil, there's no fuel injectors, there's no exhaust, there's no fuel pump, right? There's none of those things. So your electric car is way more reliable than a gas vehicle, and way cheaper to run also. I don't know how much of all this you guys know. I kind of wondered about all this, but got to start somewhere. So there's a water pump in there that pumps coolant through the motor and the battery, and you have to dump the fluid in there like you do for your antifreeze about once every 3 years. And there's a single speed transmission, which is kind of like the differential in your rear end in your car, that you should change the oil in at every 150,000 kilometers. So there is that. And then you've got wipers and tires. And the brakes don't hardly even wear out because, as probably most of you know, the brakes on an electric car are basically the motor. The motor slows down the car. Just going to check my time here. Oh, I'm over. I think we're on to Tales of EV Ownership. So I just wanted to tell you a few little things about electric cars. A lot of people don't, like I often when I'm driving the car I think, oh, people would love to know that. I bet they never knew that about electric cars. And a lot of it, people don't know what they don't know, which kind of goes back to that graph that I showed earlier, right? So just a few stories about EVs. First of all, when you get in the car, like I did this morning, let's see, what was I saying to myself? I said, the heat will come on before I get this seatbelt on. Anyway, the heat comes on pretty well instantly because it's just like a toaster element. You push the button for the heater, and the little elements in there will warm up, and that's how fast they're warm. It's just like a toaster. Care of the battery of an electric car. Most people ask and should be concerned about batteries and how long they last. And I could go on about that for a really long time, but in general they last really, really well. I think they probably last better than most of the engineers who designed them thought they will. The one thing you don't want to do with an EV is try and charge it when the batteries are really cold. So actually any electric car won't allow you to do that. It will actually warm up the batteries using the power from when you plug it in before it'll actually put any power into the batteries. Other thing that damages batteries is if they're in a very warm climate, so we're good there. Batteries will last a good long time here. And if Tesla is any Tesla batteries are well documented, and here's a little graph that just shows how long a Tesla battery, or what kind of degradation a Tesla battery has. So again, I'll try and move my little mouse. Oh crap, what do I do now? Hold on, there we are. All right, so here you can see at 0 kilometers the battery's mostly around 100%, and then down here at 100,000 kilometers, the batteries are around 95% still. And then it's a very long and slow decline, unlike some of us. And although there aren't a lot of Teslas out there, even at 250,000 kilometers, these batteries are somewhere between 91 and 95%. Oh, we're back to that guy again. So electric batteries usually have a warranty of about 8 years, and somewhere down the line, 8 years from now, you probably be able to get that battery replaced very cheaply. Like, I mean, you'll still have to pay for the battery and everything, but I'm sure there's going to be a lot of businesses that are going to spring up swapping out batteries. You can keep your car going. All right, so what am I on next? Winter traction. Oh yeah. So electric cars have awesome traction in the winter. Better than any gas car for a two-wheel drive. And that's because the motor, the controller which controls the motor, if the wheels slip, the controller will sense the reduction in torque and automatically back off the torque to the point just before where it slipped last. And so that means that when I'm going up that icy hill, this is a true story, and I have to stop because some guys pull out in front of me. Now I'm on a really icy hill in the middle of a snowstorm, and I step on the gas and the wheel spins about half a rotation and then won't allow me to do anything other than crawl up the hill at a really slow speed, slowly increasing speed, no matter what I do to the damn gas pedal. And I actually made it up the hill, and the only guys behind me that made it up the hill was one four-wheel drive. There were 3 trucks that got cars that all couldn't make it up that hill. Pass pedal, sorry, I forgot. I usually call it the pass pedal. So I hope you get this story there. When the wheels slip, the motor reduces the torque, and it won't allow you to spin the wheels anymore. So I never got stuck at all last winter, and I drove through, I thought, I wonder if I'll get stuck here. Oh, let's drive through. Nope, didn't get stuck. Pulling out when there's like 8 inches of snow all around me, right out of the snow, no problem. And they have really good, they're a little heavier than a gas car, and they have good weight distribution, so they turn really well and everything. So that was, oops. See, now it's going backwards. Why? Okay. All right, so this won't happen to you if you're driving an electric car. Another story I have is people wondered, it's just so many things that you just don't, just weird, right? So when I first got my electric car, I was sitting outside, going out to plug it in, or it was raining, and I went to plug it in, and I thought, well, what happens if I plug this thing in when it's raining? I think it'll be all right. So I took the plug, which was live, and held it up in the rain. But I'm pretty sure this is going to be okay. And I don't have any kids. And I plugged it in, and it was fine. So that's because this plug right here has extra signal, extra connectors, so that, and little rubber seals and everything, so that it's safe. Just another story about owning an EV. Okay, EV limitations. Oh boy, all right. I feel like I'm using up too much of your time. Winter driving, if you leave your electric car outside in the cold, you will lose up to half your range. So my little electric car that has 160 kilometers would only have 80 kilometers. But it still drove great. And if you park it inside and you set the charge timer, then and if it's a heated garage, even better. But if you set the charge timer, then when the charger turns on, it'll warm up the battery, charge your battery, and then out the garage you drive with a nice warm battery, and you'll maybe lose like 20% of your range. So this is it's a thing that they do lose a lot of their range, but 80 kilometers still served me all winter, by the way. I had too many other cars in my garage, all being converted to electric, of course. Okay, and then cost. I could spend hours and hours talking about cost. Electric cars still cost more than a gas car, and they will pay themselves off eventually. But there's a big trend, and actually among the EV owners here, I don't know how to do this exactly, but from what I've been told, most of the people in Alberta who own an electric car are about a used one. That's partially because the dealers don't like to sell them. I was in a dealership yesterday, and the guy said, "Oh no, we don't sell electric cars." Oh no, they don't have good enough range. So I said, okay. But anyways, you can buy a used one for very cheap, and they still don't need any maintenance. So why would you buy a new one? Which, by the way, is the business that I am operating. Honestly, I didn't want to do this because of that, right? I'm like, I don't think I want to come up here because I'm sort of promoting myself. But, well, anyway, there you go. I think we're on to, I've skipped a few things. Well, limitations. So this is the old story of, there used to be electric cars and gas cars together. And that's an electric car, and that's a gas car. And gas cars basically took over because gasoline became more widely available, and because the guys who built gas cars used electric motor for a starter and a battery instead of cranking the thing like that one there, like you can see. And I think it's kind of ironic. But anyway, we've come full circle now, and electric cars are going to start replacing gas cars. That's about driving and leaving it outside in the winter, and don't let the battery get too cold or it won't be able to go anywhere. That was a pretty good picture. And then there's the thing on the cost. future of EVs, and so I think maybe more for question and answer later or whatever, but I'm sure hoping to see really pleased to see what the City of Calgary is doing, and I'm really rooting for all those condo owners that can't buy electric cars yet. And yeah, I think I'll leave it there. I think that's enough. I'm sure that's...
Our next speaker is Maggie Hanna. Maggie has enjoyed a 30-year career in oil and gas exploration as a professional geologist. Maggie is now an innovation and technology scout for energy industries with an emphasis on sustainability, post-fossil fuel energy systems. Her favorite phrase is "what if," to elicit possibilities for the future. Often called the future girl for her ability to extrapolate current technology under development into the coming energy systems. Maggie is the owner of a used Tesla S and has PV solar panels installed on her garage. And from what I've been told, she is absolutely over the moon for both of those things. So please welcome Maggie.
What it was like for me to get solar panels on my garage and then get a Tesla. It was really a journey from my mother's. I drove my mother's Santa Fe after she died for a really long time. I've never bought a new car in my entire life, and the Tesla's no different. But I went from this gas guzzling machine, which I still use to haul kayaks and canoes around in, to putting in solar panels and integrating that with an electric car. And I just want to share my journey with that. And the costs of things and the troubles we had and the awesomeness. So here we go. This is a picture of my car. I actually signed up for a Tesla Model 3. And the problem was everything happens in Musk time. And I just couldn't wait any longer. And I had, $60,000 that I was going to spend on a Model 3 Canadian. And I couldn't wait any longer. So I looked around, and in Toronto, I found a $60,000 used Tesla. 2013, 57,000 kilometers on it, in mint condition. It's out there. You can have a look at it. And so it was in Toronto. So I drove it back from Toronto, and I had a grand adventure. And I'll save a story to the end of how I had an encounter with buffalo herd with my with my Tesla. I'll save that for the end. So here we go. And I just do, for the geeks in the crowd, my car, I will swear an affidavit, has done the Kessel Run in less than 12 parsecs. So here are the quick answers, and then we'll get into the details. We'll start with solar panels. Do they need much room? No, they don't. Not much at all. Cost with the rebate was $13,000 for 24 panels, 280 watts each. That's a total of 6.7 kilowatts that I have on my house. But because they're east-west, you have, and not south-facing, you have to take off about 20% efficiency for that. So what's the payout? Well, if I didn't have an electric car, because electricity is so darn cheap for us, it's like 4 cents a kilowatt hour, it would be about 18 years. But if you factor in the lack of buying gasoline and maintenance for an ICE machine, right, internal combustion engine, ICE machine, then you can get your return on investment down to about just a little less than 5 years. Ido and Henrietta Kerpel did the installation for us. They're from EcoSmart Energy Solutions, and I highly recommend them. In fact, Ido, I just spotted you up there, Ido. Want to raise your hand? That's Ido, and he's awesome. He's like the dentist of electrician installers. You know, he's so finicky and so perfectionisty that that's a good thing. And something happened. There we go. And our solar panels fussy? No, they're not. They just run. The only fussy thing about them is in our climate, they get covered with snow, and then I get up there with a snow rake and I pull the snow off them, and most people don't do that, but I do. So Quick facts on the Tesla. It's an S85 2013, as I said. I am over the moon about this car. It's going to be the last car I ever own in my life. And I did a test drive in a Model 3 just on Thursday. And if you're going from an ice machine to a Model 3, you will be just like, wow, this is so awesome. But if you go from an S to a Model 3, I'm keeping my S. The range on my car is 475 kilometers, and it takes about an hour to charge on a supercharger. And if I have to charge it at night off the grid and pay for that electricity, I can go from bottom to top for about $3.25. That's like a tank full, you know? So why would anybody do this? I mean, really? Well, fact is, Alberta's got world-class solar resources. If you look up there, the red one is Alberta. Red is good for solar influx. It means that we're high altitude. It means that we, especially in Calgary, we have good altitude. People say, well, you're closer to the sun. But in fact, it's that the air is thinner up here, and you get better solar influx. Also, we have a lot of cloudless days, and that really makes good for good solar influx. Germany has gone crazy with alternative energy, biomass, wind, and solar. And look at Germany. Like, green is equivalent to like Baffin Island, you know? They just have a lot of cloud there. And still, they do very, very well with their solar panels. If the sun shines and the wind blows on the same day, they have to dump electricity over the border, and they'd pay 10 cents a kilowatt hour for the privilege. So, this is my house. My house is a little house. It's 1,064 square feet. It was built in 1930. I had to blow insulation into the walls because there was none. And as you walk down the pathway there, you get into the backyard, and there's the garage with the flowers in front. Can you see the solar panels? Well, there they are. This is the east-west view of the garage, and it's a thing of beauty, I think. So what happens? You have direct current being made by your solar panels out of photons, right? And this is the inside of my garage, and I also had like a day's notice. So I didn't clean up my garage before I took these pictures. I'll just, sorry. So the power goes into that white box there, which is the inverter. That changes the direct current to alternating current at 60 hertz, which is what all our appliances run on, and then puts that power into the gray box, which is your breaker box or your sub panel. And then that power goes out that power line that's coming out the top of the garage there and over to the house. And I don't know why, but a lot of these pictures have rotated. So the middle picture, you have to look at it like this. and basically, the power comes down that gray tube and goes into the main panel in the house. You can see on the far right that in the past year, since September 21st of last year, when we turned this on, we have delivered 3.7 kilowatts to the grid and sold it for the same price as we bought 6.4 kilowatts from the grid. In the winter time, of course, the sun's lower in the sky and you make less power. And in the summertime, I make way more power than I can possibly use, even charging a car. So here's a description for the geeks among us of the kinds of things that we had. The bottom line here is that there's an Alberta rebate that's still running, and you can get 75 cents per kilowatt installed, and that took my cost from $18,500 to $13,500. Thank you, NDP. So, benefits of my solar system. It powers my house. I can't tell you how happy it makes me to sit down with the sun up, turn on my computer, and know that I'm running it off photon electrons. It just makes me happy. Because I have grid backup, I use the grid kind of like a battery. I green the grid as I sell power into the grid, which mostly goes to my neighbors, right? This past year, I told you we generated about 6 megawatts. I said kilowatts. I meant megawatts. In that last slide, I meant megawatts. We have generated, oh boy, I have to do this right, 3.7 megawatts. And we have bought 6.4 megawatts. Okay. And the cool thing is by doing this, we've spared our atmosphere about 2.2 tons of CO2. Downsides, you got to rake the snow off it if you're like me. Most people don't do that. Minor aesthetic impact for people who prefer green shingles. And there's an initial cash outlay that you have to be able to pay up front. And that's about it. So these are the folks that handle the thing for us, Ido and Henrietta. Henrietta actually takes all of the pain out of the paperwork. There is a lot of paperwork for applications and permissions and submissions and rebate and all of this stuff that you have to get right in order for everybody to be happy about what you're doing. And Henrietta's a master at it, and I just handed it over to her, and I didn't even blink. Ido, as I told you, the dentist of electricians. This is Nortessa. This is my car, and I just wanted to show you how much space there is to store stuff. And the funniest part when you're showing somebody electric cars, opening the front trunk, otherwise known as the frunk. And when you open up the frunk, people are expecting something to be in there, and it's just my camping gear, you know? And you can see in the trunk too, there's a lot of room back there. In fact, you can put the back seats down in that car and sleep back there, and people do that. There's such a thing called Tesla camping, if you can believe it. And it's flat. It's a great thing to do. It's all, and these are all. You have to look anyway. I don't know why that's like that, but I just want to say that it's elegant of design inside, even though you can't really see the elegant design. So. How do you get the energy from the solar panels into the car? Well, you use a Tesla charger, and those cost about $700 Canadian. And you pop the little reflector open, and it's white saying "Feed me," and you put the little plug in the plug, and it turns green flashing when it's charging. It just makes me happy. So, costs 60 grand for this car, plus another 5 grand for an extended 4-year bumper-to-bumper warranty. As Jim was saying, highest cost for this car for maintenance is tires, and the annual maintenance on an electric car is about 35% of what an ICE machine is in average overall electric cars. It's about the average. And of course there's the cost of the speeding tickets, and I have a few of those. And this car goes from 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 4 seconds, and mine does that regularly. Because I'll take anybody for a ride in my car. Well, I'll tell you a story. So I'm on Center Street, on 16th Avenue, close to Center Street, and there's 2 fellas there who I've donated money to before, right? They come along the cars, and so I know them. They say, "Wow, you got a nice car." I said, "Yeah, you want to ride?" And so we took both of those guys on a blow your mind kind of ride in a Tesla, and it was awesome fun. And I gave him a little bit of money. Savings, I get free supercharging with this car. So when I travel, as long as, and through the States, like they're every half battery, you just plug in there, I just load it up for free for the life of the car. which should be about 800,000 kilometers, believe it or not. When I charge it on solar panels, I have the choice to just straight solar and without any grid backup, and when I do that, I charge for free. When there's grid mixed into it, I'm only paying 4 cents a kilowatt hour, so it's like cheap like borscht to charge your car. I don't even look at, you know how you drive your car and you're always looking at the gas station signs to say, what is it there and what is it there and where am I gonna, gas up? I don't even look at those anymore. I used to look at them just to laugh, but I don't even look at them anymore. So here's the story I was going to tell you about the Buffalo. So I'm in this car. I'm used to it by now. I got used to it about Chicago. And before that, I was kind of a nervous Nelly, And I was in South Dakota in the Black Hills. And the Black Hills have a buffalo herd in them. And so I was going to a cave, and it was 2 hours away. And I got up in the dark, and I'm driving down this windy road with my Tesla, totally silent, like one with nature, It was just no fences anywhere. And just as the sun's coming up and the shadows are long, I come across this buffalo herd. And you can see in the top, I point here like you can see, right? In the top left, there's the lead buffalo, and he's leading this herd of like 200 buffalo across the road I'm about to drive down. So I cross their path and I park, and I'm just going to watch them go across the road, right? And they start to get a little bit closer, as you can see. I'm not using a zoom. This is just my little camera on my phone. And they just get closer, and I'm okay with this. And then they got really close. And the old girl who's moving there, she came right up to my open window and she stuck her head in and she sniffed my head. She was like 4 inches from my head, and I'm not kidding. Her nose is that big. And it's right here. And it's going... And I didn't know quite what to do, except I blew on her nose like you would a horse, And you just blow gently on their nose, then they know who you are, and that's all well and good. And then she inhaled my breath, and then she exhaled, and I inhaled her breath, and and I exhaled, and she inhaled my breath, and we shared breath for like this long moment. It kind of like made my year, It was, and then this fella in the bottom right there, that guy, he's in the process of licking my car. And the fella above him is licking the handle on my car. And so it's like, I don't know what it was. I don't think it was salt, because I'd just been through a rainstorm just the day before, and I had washed it since Toronto, which is salty. And anyway, bottom line is I had all these buffalo licks all over my car. And I had one in the front, one in the back, 2 sides, and the 4 corners were all licked by buffalo. It felt like a blessing, actually. I've been a buffalo blessed for this car, and I have the tongue prints to prove it. Anyway, all I can really say is that they say you can't buy happiness, but I think I just did. And if anybody wants to come to my biannual spring and fall solar electric car open house, just send me an email at this address and I'll put you on the list. And Jim Style comes along to these things and brings electric cars for you to test drive as well. So that's an invitation for everybody. So thank you very much.
Has an incredible story. His family was sadly forced to leave their hometown in Germany as a result of a pollution event. When he was 6, his family immigrated to Calgary, Alberta. His grandfather was a tremendous influence on his family and engineered one of the first solar farms in Europe over 25 years ago. His own parents became early adopters of solar power, energy efficiency products, and electric vehicle charging. It has obviously set Kai on the path to the career he has today. Please welcome Kai Farian.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about electric vehicle chargers. So pretty much the different levels of electric vehicle chargers there are on the market, what reasons for different levels, what applications, residential, commercial, and things like that. So the first one that every electric vehicle will come with is a level 1 charger. Very basic. It'll plug into your 15, your 20 amp circuit in your home. Mostly 15. They'll charge about 8 to 10 kilometers of range to the vehicle. Very slow. Not really the charging rate that you would want. It's more just a basic starter till you get your electric vehicle level 2 installed at your home. Like I mentioned, every single vehicle will have this. Very generic plug, so that's pretty basic there. The most common types of charger is a level 2. Now, the reason they're the most common, they're easily installed in homes. Usually, the infrastructure of homes will be able to have the charger added to it. So even your average home is about 100 amp service. Most homes are using maybe about 40 to 50% of that power, unless you're firing up everything at once. There is transfer switches that can be put in place for that as well. But the biggest thing for that is the reason for putting in a level 2, and it's actually the picture there, not the one on the stand. That's a commercial version. I'll talk about that in a little bit, but it's a very small kind of unit that gets installed in the garage mostly. It'll add about 30 to 40 kilometers of range per hour. Every single EV, it's adaptable to every single EV on the market. The Tesla comes with an adapter that you attach to it that it can then be plugged into as well. Teslas have their own chargers, as Maggie was mentioning as well. They're same kind of situation. They're level 2s as well. The other solutions you can do for home charging are you can get away with a 30 amp plug, so it's like a dryer plug. It'll actually deliver 24 amps to the car. And then you can get away with a 50 amp plug, which will deliver 42 amps to the car. Now, the reason the level 2 is more common and makes more sense, a lot of the times, Teslas obviously have their own apps. You can see the usage of the power. You can see exactly when you want to charge it. You can set charge times, things like that. Not all electric vehicles have that. So then that's when these chargers come into play. So there's different options for that as well. You can go with so-called dumb charger. They're pretty much just a glorified plug when it comes to that, so they don't actually have features, you don't have data with them, they'll just be more energy efficient, things like that. And then you can also go with the smart chargers. Now, the difference with the smart charger is for the home solution, it'll actually tie into your Wi-Fi. You can have an app on your phone, and it actually shows you all the data for the car, all the power that you've used. You can set the electricity rates that you're paying. You can see exactly how much money you've spent on it. You can see the type of cars that were plugged in, how much it's drawing. You can say I only want to charge it to 80% to help the battery life, things like that. So that's the kind of the benefits of going with the smart level 2 charger. They are more expensive, on the expensive end, so it doesn't always make sense, but it really depends on kind of what you're looking for. And then there's the commercial aspect. So when it comes to level 2 chargers on commercial, they're either used for grocery stores, convenience stores, secondary locations where you're not there for too long, so it kind of gives you that top up to get around. The biggest thing with that is the average person drives about 50 kilometers a day, so it kind of gives you that 30 to 40 kilometers. You're going to go get groceries, you want to plug in quickly just to make sure. The biggest thing with vehicles, actually backtracking a little bit, is like your phone. You always want to make sure that it's charged and that you have availability to it, and the electric vehicle is the exact same. People are always worried that they get what was mentioned in other talks here was range anxiety. So that's the nice thing about having level 2 in locations like your grocery stores and things like that. You'll be able to charge up and just get you back home. Again, there's different versions, so smart chargers. When it comes to, let's say, a level 2 smart charger, the nice thing about them a lot of the times is you can have an app integrated, so it'll integrate into all of the platforms that are available for like PlugShare, things like that. The Tesla charging app, they are working on adding a different charging component into just Teslas. I won't get too deeply into that. And then other apps that are associated with it. So, and then obviously the proprietary apps to the charger that's chosen for the location. The nice thing, some of the chargers itself, there's such a wide variety of things that are available for the charger to make it as easy as possible. So what I mean by that is the most valuable thing to a lot of people is your time. So when it comes to electric vehicle charging, there's apps available right now where, yes, you can see if the charger's active, but then you get to site and you don't know if it's actually active or it could be down unless someone writes a note in there, things like that into the app saying, okay, this charger's down, there's issues with it. So then there's solutions where you can actually, I'll just throw out there, ChargePoint is one of them. You can have on the app, it'll show you exactly who's charging at it, how long they've been there. You can see, it won't, unless they share it with you, it won't tell you how much they've actually used, but like how full they are. So let's say you're coming up to Superstore, you're running low on your charge and you want to get in line. So there's features where you can actually then put, okay, I want to be next in line. It'll notify the other person that's in Superstore saying, hey, Jim's outside with his car and he wants to hop in line here. Once you're done, make sure you move your car. So things like that, making it as easy as possible, and that's the nice thing about integrating smart solutions into the infrastructure rather than kind of just making it a plug when it comes to the commercial side. We have seen a big side of that where the plug is nice. It's a good availability to the early adapting of the EV industry, but as the industry grows, you're going to want to see data, you want to see metrics, you want to see, you want to be able to see as well the supply of the chargers, being able to say, okay, does this feasibly make sense for my business to put an electric vehicle charger in? So that's a nice positive thing about the EVs too. I could talk about the smart charging and the level 2s for a long time, but I won't get too deeply into that until question period on that. The third charging type is a level 3 DC fast charger. There's a wide variety on the market right now. They're the ones that are advancing the most, I would say, from what we've seen. By that I mean they're the ones that have the most research put into speeding up the charging, accessibility, everything like that. Like that was mentioned earlier, Alberta is actually right now, Southern Alberta is working on a network that'll connect different regions, Alberta, BC, Montana, and things like that with DC fast, and then backed up with level 2s kind of things. So that'll be a nice portion too. The level 3s will add about anywhere from 150 to 400. Now, they can actually add more than that. A lot of solutions are expandable, so to say future-proof, that word doesn't really exist anymore because everything's evolving so fast, but I guess future, it's built so that at least you can look kind of 5-10 years down the road rather than saying, let's install a level 3 charger and having it at 50 kilowatt chargers right now, kind of the average 50 kilowatts to 62.5. There's coming out right now, Tesla has just put out one it's called an ultra fast. They'll be a lot faster as well as for the Tesla truck that they're gonna come into that stage. We're bringing it back to the kind of the generic level 3s. They can be expanded, so when it comes to range extension, things like that, and you can actually expand that. And then the most chargers will come, not most, some will come with just the CHAdeMO, which is more for the Asian market manufacturers, and then the European will have the combo charging port on it. And then Tesla actually has an adapter for the CHAdeMO that you can purchase. It's about $500 or $600. That'll let you tie into those as well. Now, as of, I guess right now in Alberta, charging is pretty much free at most locations. DC fast charging won't or isn't free, I guess, when it comes to that. So that kind of gives you the realm of, right now we're seeing in the industry is about $20. I know the ones in Calgary here at Canadian Tire and things like that are $20 for the hour, I think it is. So if you compare that to the range that it adds, it's pretty much putting in perspective. If you went to a public area, you're paying $20 to fill up your car. So again, compared to right now, a normal 60-liter car, you're filling up for about $80. So it's still a quarter of that, even if you're doing it in public. Now, most of the time, public is more for corridor charging. You're not looking at it as, I'm going to go to the supercharger today and then go back to my house. You're more looking at it as, I'm going to drive to Banff today, or once these corridors are built, I'm going to drive to those locations so that I can actually then get that charge out of it. So the level 3 is more for the long-term longevity of the EV industry and kind of moving faster, and that's why they're really advancing those a lot, is because of people's anxiety to, instead of having your car as a commuter car, making it your first choice car. So right now, again, that was mentioned earlier, is Tesla is one of the best options for the long range. Now there's more coming online with that. The Bolt is another good option, but this will kind of mitigate that as much as possible. So putting them within that 150 kilometer range so that you can go to those areas with your EV and you don't have to worry about switching back to that electric or to that gas vehicle later on. A little bit about the installation process. I'll say with quotation, it's a very easy process. When it comes to residential, a lot of the times we'll come in, we'll assess the situation. So like I mentioned, the most common panel is a 100 amp panel in a home. Some newer infills, some newer homes will have a 200 amp panel, which then there's usually no worries on electrical infrastructure. When it comes to, I guess I'll talk about a bit about the Tesla side and then a bit about the regular EV side. Tesla, we have to do, well, we'll do this for all of them, but the Tesla, there's paperwork that has to be submitted, so calculations, things like that, to make sure that the load is available, that the power is available there as well at the source. And then we look into, do we need to run pipes to the garage? Is there electrical infrastructure that needs to be put in the garage? And then we'll kind of see with the client, is this a commuter vehicle? Do we need to add a certain amount of kilometers each day? Which plug makes the most sense? Which one makes, which one makes the most sense money-wise as well, economically? And then at the end of everything, it's just a demonstration of kind of how to use it. So very, very straightforward for that. The electrical infrastructure is not something that's going to really put a huge burden on your draw. That's for the residential side. When it comes to the commercial side, you do have to coordinate a little bit more with NMAX to make sure that the power is available to the building, that they know that there's electric vehicle infrastructure going in. Reason being, they need to know for peak demand times and a lot of that when it comes to the apartment buildings, because they have to predict all the power usage and things like that. So we will work directly with NMAX on things like that. This talks a little bit more in detail about the smart chargers. So the nice things about smart chargers are you can set schedules, you can split circuits, when I mean split circuits is, let's say you have a 2-port public station that is a 40 amp 2-port, and a lot of buildings, again, let's say a building doesn't have the electrical infrastructure, but they want to have the 2 ports because they're noticing a lot of EVs are coming, people are complaining there's only 1 port. The nice thing you can do is you can actually load share, balance the load. So you can actually set it up on the chargers that car 1 and car 2 load share, and then if car 1 has more power, car 2 will actually get more power than car 1, so that they charge up until they're the same. So there's things like that that are nice with smart chargers. You're mitigating a lot of, I guess, headache having to deal with people that, when it comes to wanting to charge their car and things like that, you kind of want to give them as many options as possible. And then another one is scheduling. Like I mentioned, you can schedule all of your charge rates. You can schedule if you need to use that charger in an hour or things like that. You put yourself on wait lists. You can combine with solar. So a lot of the times, for example, like I mentioned with Maggie earlier, is a lot of people will do solar systems on their homes to mitigate the demand increase for the EV car itself. So we'll size solar systems that are then offset the car for the usage that they're kind of predicting. You can actually get solar systems that will go directly into an inverter that has an electric vehicle charger built into the inverter. Again, this is just different products. I won't get too much into the detail of different products, but the market's very, very available when it comes to stuff like that. So you're not losing too much conversion on the back and forth as well with that. Monitoring. So when you look at the monitoring aspect of charging, so when I say that, again, it's more for businesses and things like that on the commercial side. On the residential side, there is people that want to see kind of every portion of every minute, even when it comes to solar, how much am I using, how much power, things like that. You can then see that on your app, so you can look at what was the rate that I'm being charged. Again, like I mentioned earlier, what's the rate, what's the environmental impact of everything of what I'm doing when I'm using my charger. I can set it to, here we don't have peak demand time charging or charge, so it's not as big of an issue there, but a lot of other places have that. So let's say you set the charger to only charge from 2 a.m. till 4 a.m. because it's the cheapest time for power. So there's a lot of things like that that's nice. For businesses, it's more for developing patterns of usage. You can develop patterns of who are the most common people that are going to shop at your business, who are the people that you want to market to. You can, the sky's the limit when it comes to things like that for businesses. They can play videos on the chargers, they can have advertising on the chargers, you can really hone into every portion of it with an electric vehicle charging. And for an example, for a business side of it, the nice thing about it is a lot of the times solar's great. It makes a huge impact. Efficiency makes a huge impact, but is it something that you really see? Not really, right? Like Maggie was showing, the solar blends in very nicely. You're not going to go into someone's house and expect if they have LEDs, right? They nicely blend in, they look like normal bulbs now. So what businesses will do is they'll put EV chargers in play so that then they can actually run a video of the drone footage of the solar on top of the business or showing how much offset they've done with the EV, and then and then all of a sudden people think, oh, they're such a green company, where they've had solar and the LED integrated into the building for 5-10 years, but now they put this EV charger. So that's kind of the nice thing about a lot of the charging solutions as well. It ties really nicely into creating that whole sustainable lifestyle. When it comes to cost to install the system, very, very vague. Again, these prices, it ranges pretty much from $600 anywhere to $2,500. That, again, is taking into account which electric vehicle charging station do you choose. Do you choose a regular plug solution? Do you choose a more high-end smart charger? Do you have to do electrical infrastructure upgrades, things like that? So price is very vague. We just kind of wanted to throw in something there so you get a bit of a taste on that portion of it. I think that's it. So that's kind of everything about the EV charging side of it. Obviously, when we get into the questions, there'll probably be a lot of stuff about what the different levels and things like that and what you can achieve with it. But yeah, thanks.
Yeah, Kai, this might be an opportunity to tell a large audience if there is anything you know about the etiquette of unplugging somebody else's electric vehicle that you are sure is full when yours is empty and you arrive at the charger.
The etiquette on that is probably not to do that. And actually there is some that won't allow it, so it'll actually be locked.
The connector is locked in?
Yeah, exactly. So that's a nice thing about different solutions as well. It is locked in until that person comes back and then deactivates the station. So that mitigates that a little bit, but...
When you're in that situation and you're the arrival, what do you suggest?
Yeah, patient. Same thing as if someone ices the EV charger. It's pretty much just, I guess, patience and pictures, things like that. A lot of the times, social media are a big portion of where a lot of these things go, right? On different groups and things like that.
Okay.
Just mention it, and a lot. It's going to come with new industries, right? Like you wouldn't go to someone's car and unhook their gas thing either, right?
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
I don't know why people think of stuff like that, but yeah.
The only thing I've ever thought of is that if I was driving one and I was parked there, I would leave my business card or some way for them to contact me if they needed it. But that would require me as the first to arrive to have thought of that.
No, that's smart as well. And then that's where, I guess, as technology advances and things like that, with the different charging solutions, you can then also have ones where, like I mentioned, you can tap and you can tell that person and notify them and say, hey, I'm here, like my car is dead. Or you can actually even have conversations on some of the apps as well. So you could say, hey, like my vehicle's dead, can you please come unplug this kind of thing?
Oh, yeah.
So that'll be, as everything advances, it gets better and better, right? So
maybe a QR code on the little toggle or something. Thank you very much.
No worries.
Hi, I just have a question about conversion as well. So when you convert a vehicle, is there any regulations or certification process to make the car to be roadworthy?
The good news is no.
How do you tell the insurance company about the conversion?
You just have to register it and tell them it's an electric vehicle, and same with the insurance company. They don't have to know that it was ever converted or anything.
Oh.
In Alberta, it's not an issue.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, thanks very much for your presentations. I think that the diversity of viewpoints has been absolutely fantastic. For myself, I want to know, what is it for coming at it from like the EV infrastructure installer space, the residential owner with the solar from the policy space? What is it that power utilities in Alberta could be doing better to promote the EV ecosystem inside of Alberta?
Number one is shut down the coal plants and not replace them with natural gas plants. That's going to be an issue. Right now we're mothballing coal plants, and if we put in natural gas plants where those things are, we're going to mothball them 10 years into their 60-year lifespan because of public pressure. So what the utility could do is install oxy-fired combined cycle natural gas plants, which put out pure CO2, which can be immediately sequestered. If you have to take CO2 out of a flue gas stream, it costs you $150 a ton to do that, and only $25 a ton to put in the ground. But if you use oxygen instead of atmosphere to burn that natural gas in an oxy-fired combined cycle, you'll produce pure CO2, which then can just be put in the ground or used as a feedstock for a lot of things. And also, I know this isn't going to be popular, but look up thorium molten salt reactors. I think we should put one of those in one of those sites. They're awesome, safe, carbon-free, and then the electricity that we have for the electric cars that are coming are all going to be carbon-free. So that's it.
I guess from a policy side, one of the biggest things that we looked at in terms of overall resilience is future-proofing the grid to handle these potential loads. We know that in other places where electric vehicles have high adoption rates, there are localized issues with the grid, and planning and preparing for that is crucial. Another one that I think would help for certain aspects is also getting in a special rate code specifically for EVs. Going to the Utilities Commission and applying for that, I think that would be something that would be beneficial for certain aspects, and I know some people will probably disagree with me, but it will give a certain amount of certainty. So those are the two that I would mention. Yeah, well, smart metering would be something that I think most utilities would benefit from, but I wear two hats while I'm up here because we are the only shareholder of NMAX, so I don't want to say too much as well. So,
hi guys, thank you again for the talks. I just had a question regarding the integration between solar and the electric vehicles. Can one use your electric vehicle to act as a sort of a power wall to power your house at nighttime without having to buy a power wall?
No. No, and it sucks. And it also sucks that if the grid goes out, I can't even access the power from my solar panels into my house right now. I think that's going to change, but when the grid goes out, you know, the gang goes out to try to fix the problem, and if there's somebody supplying power into the grid from a solar panel, they could get zapped, and that's why they do it that way. I think we're going to have an invention that will keep solar power from getting into the grid when there's a power outage, so that the home can actually use that power, but it's not here yet.
So as far as right now, Teslas and other vehicles that are on the market do not have the capability. It is definitely been announced that it will come. With that being said, big players, Mercedes, Volkswagen, have all silently sort of announced that they will be doing software updates on their vehicles in the early 2020s. And then your car will act as your home battery. So it'll be pretty much create the full sustainable lifestyle. You come home, you plug in your vehicle, gets charged by the solar power on your roof. You leave, you go to work. Ideally, you plug in at work, charge your vehicle there, you come back home at night, and you actually power your house. So that is the ultimate goal, so to say, when it comes to a home system. Right now, the vehicles are not available. They're just working on the cycling of the batteries, and it's a different ratio on the vehicles, so they have to work on that as well. Another thing that you can look at will be, like Maggie was mentioning, is with the power outages, the solar does go out for anti-islanding reasons, that you're not actually injuring the linesman that's working on the power lines. There is solutions where you can go to an off-grid or a hybrid system where you have a certain amount of your power then on a battery backup system, and it's a kind of a different sub-panel that's fed off of that system. Right now, battery prices are still very high. Again, Volkswagen, different companies in the world are investing billions of dollars into this, and we see within like the next 3 to 5 years, this will be something where a lot of people will start putting in battery systems into their home for this kind of emergency backup rather than a generator, right? We have people too that'll mention they want to have a generator in with their solar, so it's kind of a bit against it when if you look at it like that, the power goes out and they fire up their gas generator, but there is going to be, it is coming. It's just one of those things like technology is slower advanced when it comes to stuff like that. So.
And just to add to that, as we look into the future, as Kai is saying, we're going to be having more sources of power, and it's going to become much more complex, our grid. But there's ways that we can make it more robust and resilient as well. And one of those ways, as Kai says, is to use your car battery to store up power for your house, and also to use the car batteries to load up power when there's too much power in the grid. So one thing is going to be to heating hot water. In your house, you'll have 3 tanks probably, and we'll be heating hot water with extra electricity, but also it's a way to help balance the grid. A grid is an odd thing. If you take one electron out, you got to put one in right away. It's like that's balanced grid, and it's not an easy thing to do.
Just a quick question for Dan, actually. Thank you for kind of, I've lived in Calgary a long time, and being an EV fan, it's interesting to hear that there's actually an involvement at the city level. To have somebody being the cheerleader kind of there at City Hall is great, so thanks for that. With respect to the Prairies to Peaks, I've kind of heard rumblings about it, and it's kind of been slowly evolving over the last year, just social media clips here and there. Are you guys going to take a page out of Tesla's book and kind of put like a supercharger type map out where we can just click on it, refresh it incessantly and salivate?
So I guess, how can I answer this? So right now we're currently in the evaluation stage. So once we have a vendor selected to operate, own, and maintain the system, that's something that we can definitely look at. But we're kind of in that stage in the procurement that can't really speak to too much details on those type of things, but it's something that we can definitely have that conversation with whoever the successful proponent is on things like that. Yeah.
Just kind of as the broad strokes in the meantime, I kind of got a glimpse of your map. There was some colors, there were some shapes, but it wasn't really legible from
yeah. If you go to our EV strategy website, you'll actually be able to look and see the entire proposed network.
Awesome.
And what we did is we used a 2013 Leaf at minus 10 degrees with 4 passengers and said, okay, what type of infrastructure are we going to need in order to get around in those conditions? So that's the starting point. And we also, we're mindful of different travel patterns that we know that come out of Calgary, because that was kind of the main drivers. For some of the other smaller regional areas, they see this as a tourism opportunity, economic development in some cases as well. So we're mindful of that. So within the colors that we have there, we have different phases. So we do have a certain amount of funding right now. We are still awaiting announcement from the provincial government to find out if or what we are going to potentially get from them. So we are hoping that whoever the successful proponent is will come in phases, and eventually that will be built out. One of the reasons why the regional partners went with the approach of us kind of getting the ball rolling is that we, as municipalities and as government entities, have the ability to apply for different funding. So that's really how this all started. And Community Energy Association, our consultant on this project, has been excellent. They're the ones who did the Kootenay EV system. So we're looking at some of the things that weren't there, made some changes, and currently we're evaluating RFPs as we speak.
Hi, thank you very much for having this talk. That was really great. Question for Dan. As a Model 3 reservation holder and having one on the way, we see the rebate being phased out of the U.S., the rebate also being phased out of Ontario. I was just curious, is Alberta even considering a rebate program?
I think you'd have to ask the Alberta government that.
Okay.
I can tell you right now the City of Calgary is not envisioning any rebates associated with anything. I know the province has had some thought about it through Energy Efficiency Alberta. I don't know where they're at.
Okay.
Well, I don't know either, but there's also going to be a federal zero emissions vehicle policy document released late this year, I believe. It's supposed to be done early this year. And I kind of don't think they will put incentives in, but the U.S. government did, right? The federal rebate in the U.S. is $7,500, so it's possible.
Just a question I have one for Maggie and one for Dan. Maggie, I saw you had the two, gauges for your house. You go power coming in and going out. And does your power going out get bought? Like, do you get paid for what you put back into the grid?
Yes, I do. So in the summertime, when I'm making more power than I can possibly use, I sell it into the grid for 4 cents a kilowatt hour, and I buy it in the winter and at night for 4 cents a kilowatt hour. So it's like using the grid as a battery system. And I just wanted to address what you said, Kai, about the batteries. I didn't get a battery system for my house for 2 reasons, and one is that it makes the price twice as much. To have enough batteries to get off grid. And the second reason is that most of your electric bill is actually supporting the maintenance of the grid. And our infrastructure in Alberta for electricity distribution is worth $263 billion. That's the price of that asset. And so everybody, I think, should be paying that to keep that asset in good shape. It's like the commons, And if people like me who can afford to get off the grid do that, and we stop paying that, and then that price gets distributed around all the folks who have less ability to pay it, and you still take benefit. You go to the bank, you go to the store, they're all on the grid. So yeah, I don't think that's the right thing to do.
Okay. And then for Dan, I don't know if you'll know this, but the City of Calgary, the grid now as it is, would it be able to support a large influx of electric vehicles being plugged into houses now?
So that is something that our colleagues at NMAX Power are currently looking into. There has been some work that has looked into what areas of improvement would be required. There is some preliminary work that shows where some of the uptake, it's actually called the EMAP study, and it is publicly available through Pollution Probe, and they looked at where the early adopters were within the city doing a bunch of survey work. But they have used some of that work to overlay where potential weaknesses are in their grid. Specific areas, couldn't tell you.
Okay. I
know that from other examples that we've seen in other cities, Toronto being the one that comes to mind, is that they had certain issues when 4 or 5 people on one street ended up getting EVs, and that's something that we are anticipating in Calgary. As one person gets something in their neighborhood, it seems to cluster in those areas. So developing an idea of where those clusters are going to be is a lot of the work that our friends over at NMAX Power are looking at. So,
okay, awesome, thank you.
Hey, thanks everybody. I was just wondering, on the CISA website for tonight's session, it mentioned that solar installations for places that are utilizing EVs can have as soon as a 5-year ROI on the system. I wonder if any of the panelists can speak to that.
So I run those numbers in arm-wavy kind of generalizations myself. And with a $13,000 install for the solar, I pay about $2,400 in gas costs a year to go 19,000 kilometers a year. And so that, you divide that in, plus if you factor in 35% less maintenance costs, and that actually is part of the equation, then you can get down to just under 5 years. But that does not include the price of an electric car. You're going to drive a car, most of us, you're going to drive a car anyway. And so whether you paid $35,000 or $60,000 for your electric car, it isn't factored into that equation. Does that make sense?
Another portion of it is with the distribution and transmission. So when you plug in your vehicle at home and you do not have solar, you're paying about 12 cents a kilowatt hour for that actual kilowatt hour. So if you're getting it from solar, you're going to mitigate that cost as well. So it has to do a lot with the power to get it to your home, right? So that's when you're calculating that for the usage. So that'll give you a payback better on the solar as well, just touching on everything else you said.
So that's including the fixed cost and the moving cost for that you pay to support your grid, right? But I didn't calculate it that way. Anyway.
I was just wondering if you've ever damaged or scratched your panels by clearing snow off in the winter.
Those things are so frigging tough. I'm telling you, I bought these Trina panels, and on the website they take hail that big and fire it out of the cannon at those solar panels, and it just shatters. The ball doesn't, not the panel. The ice ball just shatters, right? They're tough as nails from impact and scratch and all of that kind of stuff. I wouldn't walk on them. That's the thing. I think flexing would be a problem. But yeah.
Can I ask what kind of efficiency those same panels get?
Ito, what's the efficiency on those Trina solar panels I have, the 280 watts? Around 18%? Yeah, that's what Kai said. Yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome.
The other thing with the scratching of the solar panels, it does have a film kind of on it that if you do go at it with an ice scraper, it's not ideal, but you can kind of scrape the snow off with a brush.
Just a really basic question for you, Maggie. You mentioned something that I hadn't heard of before, which is your residential solar system, how it connects with your Tesla charger. You're able to kind of choose whether you go all solar or whether you're working within the normal grid-tied system. Does that mean that you're disconnecting the charger from the grid, and so it'll only how does that work?
So in the Tesla, that's a really good question. In the Tesla itself, there's this touch screen that is like your gateway to the world, and on that screen, one of the panels for charging has a little button, touchscreen button, that says how many amps you're going to charge. So it will detect my 48 amp charger in my garage, but if I start charging even on a sunny day, 48 amps, I'm going to be having grid backup for sure. So what I do is I look at the little numbers on my inverter and take the far right one and the far left one, and I divide, and that tells me how many amps I'm putting out, and then I choke down the Tesla to that many amps for that moment, and maybe a couple less because a cloud goes by, and then that's how I get pure solar photon electrons into my Tesla. It takes longer, it really does, but my car, like everybody else's car, we only use them 4% of the time, and 96% of the time they're parked on the most expensive land in the planet. So, that's what I do.
Thanks again for your presentations. I have a question for Dan. I think you had some bullets on your slides, but I missed it. For public charging stations, is the city gonna be running them, or the city will be encouraging businesses to set them up and go through?
So the City of Calgary's approach for public charging stations, specifically at city facilities, or not city facilities, is the general public. So we are looking at various options that may include, utilization of certain spaces for public charging. Those will not be owned by the city. It will go through the same general principle that we've gone through. If we do anything, it will go to a third party to run and operate. We're not in the business. We don't have the expertise. The City of Calgary, I don't think, wants to make that a business stream. So we're really there to help people, enable them to put out this infrastructure, and hopefully find ways to streamline processes. I know it's kind of a bit of a vacuum right now under the current policy regime, so we're hoping that we can iron out some of those issues and allow the private sector to fill it in.
18% efficiency for a solar panel, what does that mean? And then the second question is, what is the expected life cycle of a solar panel? I've heard 20 years.
Yeah, so your first question, 18% means of the solar influx energy, how much of that gets turned into electrons? 18%. They have solar panels now that are up around 25%, even. And Panasonic's got a great one that has little mini, like, mountains and valleys on it that. Oh yeah, that actually different angles of refraction. You have more angles of refraction then. And your second question was lifetime. Oh yeah. 25 years is on those solar panels, plus on the inverter, 25 years warranty. You don't want to put solar panels on your roof unless you got pretty new shingles up there. Because if you've got crappy shingles and you put the solar panels up there and you got to change the shingles on your roof, then they all got to come off, and then you put your new shingles on, and then you put the solar panels back. So make sure you change your shingles before you put the panels on, because they also have about a 25-year warranty.
Right. Yeah, so at the end of their life, and this is a recycling question, which maybe is a little bit early for solar panels. I've heard that most of them have quite a few exotic metals or rare earth metals in them as well, so they're not recyclable. Is that true?
Well, that depends on what you call recyclable. Yes, that's true in that chemically they're very, very difficult to separate those metals out. But, and I'm hoping Alberta's going to get one, and it's called a superplasmic arc. And this is the way for Alberta to recycle lithium-ion batteries from used cars, or that are like so dead they can't even run a house, and also take the vanadium out of the ash ponds up in oil sands, and also handle old solar panels as well. And what that does, it's like 30,000 degrees C, and it takes every atom away from every other one.
Vaporizes the material.
Pretty much. And then has a kind of a centrifuge so that the heavy elements come off early, and then the lighter ones come off later, and that's how you separate them. There's a company down in Arkansas that is out of Russia, and they have a superplasmic arc, and they're processing coal ash down there and taking those exotic metals out of the coal ash. So it's totally possible, and this will be our next generation Swan Hills.
EVs are sold primarily by word of mouth. I have 2 EVs myself, and everyone who buys one seems to just have a test drive from a friend. There's, again, barely any dealers that have any cars. One thing that I haven't heard discussed tonight is also electric bicycles. They are the #1 sold electric vehicle in the world. Sweet owners. My next door neighbor is like 85 with an EV bike, and it's so cool. And it's this gateway drug where people are like, oh, I have an electric lawnmower, and then I got a little bicycle. You're like, why am I not just plugging in my car? And so, you don't have to encourage people to make a $20,000+ investment into an electric vehicle when they could buy maybe it's $3,000 bicycle and it's got all the bells and whistles. I've seen one guy, he's got a fat bike and it's also EV powered. He's ripping up 10th Street like nobody's business in the middle of the snow. So